Welcome, I'm Suzanne Phillips. Thanks for joining me again on Psych Up Live. Our guest today is Dr. David Hescheles, an over 80 years young psychologist, psychoanalyst, group therapist, marital therapist, and author who will be sharing with us what he calls the golden years, the greatest myth, medical and psychological challenges of aging. Drawing upon personal as well as medical and psychological findings on aging, Dr. Hescheles will consider the realities and challenges, including the difference between realistic exercise versus workouts, the value and use of a gerontologist, the meaning of becoming a super-ager, confronting medical and cognitive challenges of aging, unexpected anxieties, the gender differences, and much more. Dr. David Hescheles is a New York State licensed psychologist with postdoctoral diplomas in individual and psychoanalytic psychotherapy, group psychodynamic psychotherapy, and cognitive behavioral psychotherapy. He is past president and outstanding psychologist of Suffolk County Psychological Association and the Adelphi Society for Psychoanalysis and Psychotherapy. Dr. Hescheles is also the author of a widely read book, Guide to Starting a Therapy Group with John and A. Ray Rice. Dr. David Hescheles, it is my privilege to welcome you to Psych Up Live.
Thank you for asking me here.
Okay.
So we've done a lot of work together. And I always say, I just have to tell the audience, I always say to my wife, Nancy, she goes, how did it go with Sue? I go, it was a trifecta plus. I grew professionally, I grew intellectually, I grew emotionally.
Okay. I paid him to say that. No.
No, no,
Okay.
it's from the bottom of my heart.
Okay. Thank you so much. Okay. So we're both very interested in this topic. Let's start, Dave, with gender differences with mental health and with aging.
Okay, there are significant gender differences, how women and men approach aging. Men usually what they do is that they keep things in and that they reframe things for themselves and try to make it more optimistic as they age. Now, I have to reference this that aging, why I say it's a myth, the golden age, brings on plenty of anxiety because it's the exact opposite of adolescence. Adolescence, new things were coming into you that you had to integrate. As you age, things are being taken away from you that you've always been able to do,
Right.
and that it creates a lot of anxiety in that it changes your whole identity. And men and women very differently approach that. Women are much, much better at having groups and having group support groups and having other women friends. Men are usually two-step people that they have work and they have home. And then as they age and they need to retire, they don't have the third chair where they don't have the group of friends, they don't have the outside habits. It was all around the home, and it puts a tremendous stress on the marriage
Mhm.
when that starts to happen, when men are home, or men and women, if the women were working, when they
Mm,
start to do it, and there's a lot of empty time
mm,
that they've never had to deal with, and that happened with me. I I never had that much spare time. As I've gotten older, I still have a practice, but it's a much, much smaller practice. And I had a lot of empty time. I was driving my wife crazy. And I didn't know what to do with the empty time. I had hobbies. I was a deep sea fisherman. I'm a licensed captain. And I would do that. I knew very well, I would say it to some of my friends, this is not a hobby as you were growing older, because I knew I wasn't going to be able to do it, but I never had something to replace it. and I had
Mm,
a lot of empty time. And the first couple of months were very, very tough. And I think they are for most men,
mm,
particularly. And because the
mm.
women are much more expressive than emotionally expressive. They're much comfortable with it. Men a lot of times try to resolve it internally as they age and then make it into a more positive thing. They reframe much more than women do.
Well, we came upon research, Dave and I, as we were preparing for the show, that showed during life, women express more anxiety and have more depressive disorders. But the question is whether or not they're just not, men are just not expressing it, because what we see in men, especially as they age, is we see more suicidality and
Much
more
more.
drinking and drug use, more substance abuse in men. So what we might understand about this, having worked in the field for so long, is that they're holding so much in until they can't find a way to resolve it or minimize it. And as Dave says, the good part of some activities for men, if it's a group of men golfing, they're also talking. If it's a group of men on a boat, they're also talking. But as men age, and if they feel they cannot do these kinds of sports, then it becomes difficult because you correct me on this, Dave, men are often more embarrassed than women to call a group of friends and say, come on over, let's play cards, unless they've always played cards with a certain group. It's the change, as you say, Dave, it's the change from who they were. And when you add the aging realities of illness, osteoporosis, knee replacements, all of that, everything's a hit on a personality unless you could redefine yourself.
The and as you look at the literature and a lot of the research, it puts that women experience more distress. I think that's not an accurate description though, because they're more comfortable. Um, let's look at the difference as men and women age. Women have a much stronger reaction to losing their beauty or their looks, and it's a double bind. As they start to look, they don't know what else they have. One of the things I suggest to women is when they look in the mirror and they see that they're aging, that they should look at their functionality rather than like my legs are starting to get flabby. Um, Men, on the other hand, it's I don't express any feelings, and it's that I'm a strong man. And I don't need anybody. I have myself to be able to, and and it happens with me. One of my greatest fears is that I'm going to have to be taken care of as I grow older. That's not okay with me, but I think that's typical of a man to ask,
And it
not
becomes
to want help.
And that becomes particularly dangerous if it means they don't want to check in with a physician or a gerontologist, as you suggest, because what could be handled with certain illnesses, with heart disease, etc., the beginnings, maybe a trace of some sort of abnormality in a cell, gets worse if nobody goes to check it. So the idea of getting involved with a regular physician, and maybe you can speak more about why you're suggesting that people use gerontologists, Dave.
It's very important. First of all, men don't like to go to the doctor. Yeah, I don't particularly like to go. I'd rather suffer on my own. No, I'm serious.
Well, you're not
Women,
alone.
women will go to the doctor. They're gonna, I always felt that women are better at taking care of themselves. I will suffer with something for a long time before I'll go. I had a couple of 2 years ago, I had a cough, and you think I would know better. And my wife said to me, Dave, that's more than a cough. I said, no, it'll go away. It'll take care of itself. It turned out I had pneumonia.
Uh-huh.
So, and it's typical. That's how a man looks at the world. A woman would have taken care of it. The other thing that I think is important is that, and this is very hard for both men and women, is that it may be time to get rid of your GP and go to someone who's gerontologically sophisticated. Because a lot of times the GPs are not, and that they don't understand many of the issues that are coming up with aging. They want to give you some medicine or something, and that's not okay. It's the understanding of many of the stresses that aging takes on
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
you as you age. And like I said, women can express it much more easily. That's why they score the higher on the distress as they age than men do. Men
Hmm.
won't say it; they'll just suffer.
That's really good advice. So, one of the things, Dave, you've thought a lot about is the difference if someone asks when they're aging, what's the difference between a workout and staying healthy? If I don't know that if I think I might hurt myself, or if I start out trying to jog and end up having to have my knee replaced, this is not good. So, how would people start slowly if they were recently retired? They don't have a whole big workout. They were always much more brilliant and cerebral than they were athletic. What do you suggest?
And I'll use myself again. My pattern would be that I would be at the gym every day, working out heavy. And then after a while, with what we do, it's emotionally exhausting. You're drained. And at the end of the day, you start to feel like, I just don't feel like working out. I want to take a nap or whatever it might be.
Hmm.
So it becomes an obligation then. And after a while, you start to dread it. What I started to do and what I think people need to do is to do movement in their lives, like what I've started to do, and you can translate it in however you're seeing it in your life. I used to see people in practice back to back. I now do give 15 minutes between people. And what that does for me is I can come up, get out of my chair 5 or 6 times, that there's some movement, that I'll move around my desk. I'll move, uh, I, I will do different types of things in movement rather than just exercise. The other thing that I know that we can't interact with, but I'd like to hear other things, and I'd like people to think about it. What kind of movements do you do? And again, Nancy thinks I'm nuts. I don't walk around the house anymore. I hop. And it really cardiovascular, and I get out of breath from it, but it's a form of exercise in some ways, the hopping. It's much harder to do with walking. People might want to just walk fast if you have some sort of injury, or if you're feeling it's hurting your knees and stuff like that, don't do it. But it's been very, very helpful. The other thing I do that I've integrated into my life, if I'm going upstairs, I try to go up the stairs. We have 14 steps. I try to go up it 5 times. It only takes a couple of minutes, but it's also something that gets your heart going, and you get out of breath after the fifth time, and it's a form of exercise. So
Hmm.
what I'm trying to do is not just do a workout. I still work out, but it's not like I have to do it at the end of the day when I just don't feel like doing it. It's
Hmm.
integrating different kinds of movements into my life, like walk around and this is very funny. We were talking about it before with my mother used to make my brother and I walk around the table 20 times before we walked a mile and a half to school because we needed the exercise. I used to say, Mom, it's a mile and a half and you don't drive us to school. But that's a really important learning that I've taken into my life rather than just the exercise.
I think one of the things you're saying is that small is big. And if it feels to you that you can't sustain a routine on your own, You'd be amazed if you're even able to go outside and walk because there are other people walking. And I've seen it. People start to talk to each other as they're walking. And so these unexpected friendships pop up. And don't think you're alone with, I don't know what to do next, because everybody's in a very similar boat. The baby boomers are a very large group, a very large group.
And right here between you and I, we're having the gender difference. Because when I go out walking, and a lot of times I don't like to go out walking because people start to talk to me. I want to go out walking, and I think that's a gender difference, where women are much, like it much
Inclined.
more,
Yes, they're more inclined
inclined to be
to
able to
yeah, yeah,
interact.
yes,
I like the treadmill because I'm alone and I can
uh-huh,
do it, and I
yes.
put the treadmill on an incline. But there's a gender difference
Hmm.
that happens with aging.
Hmm.
That I kind of feel like, and I like the people that stop and start to talk to me. I really do. But I'm out here walking, seeing nature and stuff like that.
Okay.
And by
All
the
right.
way, there's a lot of studies out that show that when people do that, what you're saying, going out walking, going into nature, that there's much less anxiety and depression that they feel as they age. If they take in an hour and a half of nature,
Hmm. Hmm.
as during the week,
Hmm.
that it's very surprising how psychologically value it is to do something like that.
Hmm. Okay, let's talk about something that frightens all of us, which is the memory gaps. Why is it that I can't remember the last name of a friend that we were talking about, but I can remember all kinds of things from childhood, the address, the cross streets, the name of the people next door, the name of their dog, etc. Why do we have such a crystal memory for long-term memory, but we can't remember, did we buy the sugar last time? So this is something people worry about.
They very much worry about it, and I would imagine you get asked the same question. How do you know when it's going over the edge? When it's
Right.
really we're into cognitive decline, and that it's not just normal aging. Normal aging, the prefrontal cortex and the hippocamp, hippocamp, you just did it.
Hippocampus. Yeah,
Yes,
hippocampus.
is it's going to atrophy as you age, and that's the reason it's a normal part of aging. But how do you know when you are going into the next steps that it's and I think it's very important that you do know it. Most
Oh, yes.
most physicians say, "Why do you want to know it if it's happening?" Because there are things you can do that can that won't stop it, but will slow it down a significant amount of a significant amount.
Hmm.
Um, the and that and some of the things that you do know. There's two tests out that you can take on your own. One's called the MOCA, MOCA dot cognitive test. You can get it online, take it, and it'll tell you where you are cognitively. And the other one is the SAGE test. It's from the University of Chicago, Wexner Auxiliary, I think it is. But you can look just whatever you have, search engine, whatever search engine you use. Look up the SAGE test. It's a self-administered test, and it'll tell you where you are. And you should know if you've gone over the normal aging. But however, you are as you age going to forget names, forget things. I like I'm doing the steps. I forget whether I did 8 or 10 of them, 10 flights up. That's a normal part of aging. Um,
And what you said in terms of the brain, the hippocampus, it's almost like it doesn't want to waste its space. So it's going to remember something very important, like what country your parents came from, but maybe not the routine every day. So, people come up with memory tips for themselves. They always leave their phone in the same place. They always put their checkbook back after they write a check. Um, Learning a new skill invites stimulation in the brain. Trying a new hobby, even if it turns out you hate it, you found out something. And usually it's funny or it's something good. Or you're doing something, we were talking about being with grandchildren and trying a new game that they know and you don't know at all is sometimes fun. And another big fact and it's worth us talking about, Dave, is sleep. It's a problem for many, and it's crucial in terms of memory and physical strength.
It's a sleep. The most important thing about aging is the movement and exercise. That's really the top of the line. That'll keep you from um, you, we're using the word aging. The better word, I think, is wilderness. Getting, we're not, I'm not really that concerned about longevity. I'm concerned about wellness longer
Okay,
period.
okay,
And it's
that's
a
good.
big difference,
It's a good
right?
correction. Yeah.
And it's that you have to, you want to age well. You
Hmm.
want to age healthily. I know a lot of people that have aged, have longevity, but with lots of illnesses. And that is not a good way to age. And there's ways you can do that you're not going to have a lot of those things. Exercise being a number one of it, being the number one. Diet is another one. Sleep is incredibly important. What happens during the sleep during stage three is when in REM stage three that the I can't think of the name glycomoma system starts to come in, and it takes out all the junk that your memory has, that your
Collected.
brain
Yeah.
has, the beta and the tau proteins. It starts to take them out. And it's very important that they're taken out through the blood system. And then the exercise is what makes you go to the bathroom and get rid of it all. And that leads to much more healthier aging. Am I making sense what I'm saying? Okay.
Yes, sure.
Yeah, it's real important. Sleep is incredibly, I can't say it enough. Sleep is incredibly important.
Now,
And
one thing that helps with sleep is not worrying about it. So if you come up with a ritual, a lot of people have a ritual of they don't fight it, they get up, they drink some warm tea. This is what I do, and read some fiction, and I'm sleepy. Now, other people have different kind of rituals. Some people get up, they pray. Some people get up, they color. But if you don't panic about the fact that it's late and you're still not asleep, your body's going to really take care of you. But it's good to think of it as, oh, okay, so I'm going to do the routine before I fall asleep. And people are very creative about what that is.
yes,
They'll read books that they used to read when they were younger. They'll read new books. They'll try different types of tea if that's what they drink, rather than panicked that they can't sleep and tossing and turning.
one of the things that, as I said, in my life, sleep has been an issue. The if I and what I find the most helpful is if I'm not asleep within 5 or 10 minutes, I get out of bed and I start to feel my mind racing. Like for this, I was all the different things we're getting into, and I would be thinking about them before I was going to sleep. What I wanted to say, I'd get out of bed and go to my thinking chair. That's out of the bedroom and think in there. And as I started to think about it and go through it, I would start to get really tired. And then I go back to bed. Very important that you don't stay in bed while your mind is
Right,
racing.
right,
Very
right,
important.
right. We're going to take a brief break. You've been listening to Psych Up Live. We're here with this terrific guest,
You're
Dr.
kidding
David
me.
Hescheles.
It's a half hour.
We're
Get
taking a
out of here.
break.
Get out of here.
Regardless of what he says, we're going to take a break and we'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. I'm Suzanne Phillips, and I'm here with a terrific guest, Dr. David Hescheles, who's touching all the bases on aging, cognitive, illness, exercise, going up and down stairs if you want to join Dave's club. All, all kinds of important things. Now we want to talk about a reality that too many face, and that is when one of a couple over 60 is diagnosed with a serious illness, and how the couple proceeds. Who becomes the caregiver? How hard is it for people who have felt very independent? And even though they felt independent, they had very, very good marriages, but they were never in a position where someone had to take care of them. So they feel embarrassed by it. They feel, what did they do to bring on this illness? They want to talk to the partner, but the partner is also often the only one they will vent to in an angry way. So this becomes a two-person situation. We have one person with a diagnosis who's frightened, who's angry, and who's embarrassed. Somehow we're always embarrassed if we have a heart problem or we have to get a knee replaced. More and more people are trying in our age group are trying to normalize this, but some people are very sensitive to anything being wrong. So the question becomes, Dave, how does the couple become a team instead of I'm the sick one and what do you want to spend your time taking care of me for? Or the caregiver thinking, I'm not sure I could do this 24/7. I don't know how I love him, but how am I going to do this? How will I give up the rest of my life? So, what kind of suggestions can we think about, Dave, for that scenario?
I think and a lot what we do, Sue, is a lot of it is initially the initial stage is acceptance. Accept
Yes.
that you're feeling that way, and not to try to not to express it to the other person, but for you to you to really accept that I'm resentful, and it's normal to feel resentful on it. The other person to feel like I'm a burden. I don't ever want to be a burden, but to accept that feeling is very important
Mhm.
because most people become critical of themselves,
Right,
not,
right.
and it that does start to interfere with the marriage. They're trying to cover up, and there's a superficiality. Then I think the couple needs, and I've seen this many, many times with this situation has happened, where they start to share their feelings, especially for men. It's much harder for them to see that. But a new level of intimacy starts to happen, and they actually become closer emotionally, even though there's this burden in their marriage. Um, Whoever it is does not want to be sick,
Mhm.
and it's having lots of feelings, struggle with it. The other person definitely doesn't want to spend their life taking care of them. But the nature of the intimacy and the closeness, and them beginning to recognize how much they care about each other and how important they are, it becomes really magnified in those situations if they
Mhm.
start to talk about it. And that really kind of like allows the other, it's like getting it's like getting ice cream on on a food you don't like. It's something like that. It just becomes a lot of them, a lot of people I've seen, especially those that go into therapy with this. They've seen their relationship. They say, our relationship is better than it ever was. I never would have expected this.
Uh-huh.
and
Uh-huh.
and and it's cause they become more intimate, and that they're able to recognize that, especially for men, that there's so many other things in their lives, that how important their wife is to them and how
Mhm.
much they need them. A lot of men don't recognize that the wife is the center of the of and able to admit it, that it's the
Mhm.
center of their whole life, that they're
So,
incredibly dependent on them.
so that being said, let's talk about when someone's issued a code of silence. So, and this we have both worked out with couples that we see, but this is a terrible thing, but it's a very normal thing. So, in some ways, especially it could be the male or the female who's been given a diagnosis that's terrifying both. But a code of silence locks everyone in place. It means The caregiver can get no resources, some of which could be very valuable to the care of her loved one. But if she's not allowed to talk about it with her Canasta group or her walking group, she's now cut off from all of those people, because when you're carrying a secret, there's nothing left to say. So she's now impaired as a helper. So if the person who's ill can see that, as David just suggested, we're going to team this. We're going to do this as a team. I'll tell you how I feel. I'll tell you how I feel about the doctor. I'm terrified of chemo. And whatever you think I want to know about. So if the other comes back and says, Jack just went through something just like you. And Mary said, one of the things that helped after chemo was such and such. Or Jack said, the one thing he was able to eat was this. Or they've been in the same place almost that we have, always waiting for the call, always waiting for the numbers. So letting your partner, be it the man or the woman, but letting the partner have access to the outside world is a win for both.
It's definitely a win for both. And it also takes a lot of the burden off that other person, that they're able to talk to someone outside of it. Um, and the person that doesn't want anyone to know doesn't is totally unaware of that it's going to make this whole thing easier in some ways when the caretaker is able to talk to someone, that there's a burden on the caretaker, and the person that's ill, that's not something that they really want to take on extra. They're feeling guilty about it anyway, that they're doing it. And if the couple can come to that understanding that this will help our relationship, if anything, and especially with men, they're embarrassed when it's an embarrassment when they have a limitation or a weakness of somewhat, or something's wrong with them. My experience is women are much better at being able to express it and say it. They don't like it, but they're able to say
Mm.
it. Men have a much more difficult time. They sort of withdraw, and when they have guests over and things like
Mm.
that. And
One, one thing we should say, we've both done a lot of trauma work, is we always do care of the caregiver groups. So if there's been a shooting, we're meeting with families after 9/11, or whatever kind of traumatic event has happened, you send in a group of people to help those who are very, very close to the most acute stage of that trauma. You need to give those people a place to talk about it, because they're going back in the next day. So everyone from Red Cross training to the groups that we've run through the American Group Psychotherapy Association, we focus on care of the caregiver. And that's what this really is. In another scenario, it was reversed. That is, someone could get chemo privately and the wife or the husband is there. But in this case, the wife said, I'm going to go sit on the recliners with all those people getting the IVs, getting the medication. And he said, well, don't you want privacy? Wouldn't you rather stay here? She said, no, no, those are my people. Those people, that group, those are my people. So that didn't mean she was rejecting him, but it normalized this journey through chemo and what she was facing, and actually was a gift to him. Because then he saw, I'm not alone in this. She's even getting help from the other patients.
most definitely, and then they start to become aware of it. One of the other things when this does happen in a relationship is that the person that's ill gets most of the empathy and
Yes,
most of the
attention.
um, attention, and the focus becomes on them. And people don't realize how demanding this is for the caretaker,
Yes,
and how much they're going through on their own. And the
yes,
caretaker, a lot of times, does not recognize it themselves.
right, right.
That this is really, it's a new life that they're having. It's a new
Yes.
relationship that they're having, and it's important that it's accepted and recognized in
Yes.
some way.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Very much so. Very much so.
It's a
Where do
tough
you
it's a tough thing when that does happen in a relationship. You know, with therapists, but your heart goes out when something like that. Some, that you're blindsided, that people are blindsided in some ways, and it's never the way they thought they were going to age and go through the aging process.
Now, one of the things we said earlier was that even though the depression and anxiety, the statistics tell us that women suffer more from depression and anxiety throughout their adult life, men experience more of a crisis than women do. And so the question becomes, how do we help a man know that he doesn't have to carry so much pain that he becomes suicidal? We say that a suicidal moment is when the person thinks this is unchangeable, unbearable, and something I can't do. There's no way out of this. And so, how do we approach that for, let's say, a very vibrant man who no longer can work and all of a sudden is diagnosed or just isn't as well as he wishes he was?
The I I think that it's with compassion and saying to the person that this is the most difficult thing that can happen for you, because the outside of you, most of these guys, most of these people, whether it's women or men, are very sensitive people underneath. And then it's like, but they have the exterior, and that they're having to deal with a part of themselves that they've tried to cut off, that sensitivity part. And it's to normalize that and get them to accept it, that I think becomes very, very important for them to be able to be vulnerable.
Mhm.
That's that, and that makes this process, I don't know if it's ever easy, that's the correct word, but more acceptable, and more, if they can, you know, and what I usually do is I'll give a man an assignment to say one vulnerable thing a week to his wife or to his friend. One vulnerable thing that, and it's difficult, but it starts in the process of being able to become vulnerable. And the situation we're talking about is a very vulnerable situation. Very.
Well, we know that, and you're right on it. Resilience is very much a part of resilience is being able to accept one's vulnerability.
Yes.
If you can accept it, you can work with it. Because denial, the saddest part about denial is that I don't care if I'm sick, I don't care if I lost my job, I don't care if I'm getting divorced, is a recipe for disaster. But once a person can understand that for good reason they're frightened if they have a diagnosis or their spouse has a diagnosis, if for good reason, then once it's accepted on some level, then you can start using all of what you are owning in yourself to
Yeah.
really handle it and brainstorm together.
Yes. Very much so. Very, very much what you're saying. Just the acceptance is so such an important foundation to being able to grow and go forward, and and deal with these kind of things. Um, and like you're saying, and with the vulnerability about it, very important.
If there's an opportunity, I want to say to our listeners, for you or your partner together or either in separate groups to join groups, it can be an unbelievably supportive situation.
Yes.
And one might even we put together our own group of wives whose husbands are struggling with something, because we've seen people in the aftermath of trauma or illness not speak in the group, but then say, what that man said, that's what I feel. The power of a group, whether it's a group that you put together or that you go to a mental health person with, there are self-help groups, there are recovery groups, is that someone else there knows that feeling and they may have the word for it that you can't quite get yet. But as soon as someone says it and you say, that's it, that's what I feel, you become a part of the group and a part of yourself again. Because if you could name it, you can deal with it.
And it's also recognizing that one of the most curative things is universality. How many times in your groups and groups we've seen where people start to feel one of the major feelings they come out of it, it's like I'm not really abnormal for feeling this. There's not something wrong with me. And I can express it then, that there's a universality when they're hearing other people say it. And there's a tremendous relief that people have when they see that, that they're not alone. It's not just them. And a lot of the shame goes away at
Mhm.
that point.
I would say to people, if you have a group of people, um, you could look up who's an expert in the particular topic that you all have a shared interest in, and see if that person could come and meet with you. You can do it quite informally. You could contact somebody who is a group therapist or someone who is a psychologist who deals with medical issues. But there's ways to make resources for the person who's ill, for the caregiver, and there's ways to go forward as a couple despite diagnosis and despite illness or injury.
I very much so. Groups, groups are very powerful on their own. Just the whole essence of the group, just what I'm saying, universality, acceptance, being able to be vulnerable, and it breeds that in a lot of ways. Um, One of the biggest, when I used to do groups publicly, one of the things I was the most concerned about, I did one at Adelphi, and one of the things I was concerned about, because it becomes very seductive, is that these were people in the group were people from the Adelphi postdoctoral program. I wanted to make sure that they didn't reveal too much because groups tend to do that. It you see someone else and you start to feel a connection with them and say, wow, I feel that. And then you start to go one level deeper.
Mhm,
And that's
mhm,
how groups work. Most people don't
mhm,
know that,
mhm.
but that's how they work. There are times
So
when
you're
it's not appropriate.
uh,
There is times that it's very appropriate.
so you're
Self-help
saying,
groups can be very, very
yeah.
useful.
So you're talking about protecting the boundaries. One other thing that I wanted to mention in terms of family systems is secrets never work. So if the couple knows mom or dad is struggling with this and they're not telling the kids, that's a problem because kids know. They see the look on your faces, they worry about mom or dad, so that the worst thing you can do in a way is to protect your children with secrets, your adult children or your little children. Kids
I'm
know, they always know.
I'm laughing. It's not only kids really know, they always do know. Dogs know. No, I'm serious. Anybody, we've had dogs. They know when either one of us are sick or my daughters have our daughters have dogs. The dog it's got its nose in the my daughters,
Yeah,
wherever they're sick, they're smelling it,
yeah,
they're licking them all the time. And it's yes, people know,
yeah,
that
people
they
know, but
absolutely
secrets never really work in a
they don't.
family. They're the opposite of really resilience because they're hiding the pain that could be shared and could be dealt with. So the more a couple and a family decides they're going to team on this and they're going to use people's resources and they're going to let people um, recover and have time out and have time with other people and be able to share, the best the best of aging goes on.
And talking about the best of aging, one of the things that couples and people really are that it's helpful to is to talk about how you're feeling about aging.
Yeah,
Very rarely is that talked about.
yeah, right.
And it's I mean it's one of the most, how can I say it? Of all the things that happen in our lives, aging is one of the most profound stages of it. That you're starting to experience anxieties about things that you can't do. You're questioning things about, I could do that before. How come I can't do that? I have a grandson. We used to race all the time, and I wasn't going to give him an inch, and he beats me now. You know, he goes to me, Pop, what's the matter? Your knees bothering you? No, it's not my knees are bothering me.
But
I'm I'm 84 years old.
but Dave, you're saying something really important. Everyone ages. There's no way around this.
That's
So
good.
or one of our messages today is make it work.
Yeah,
Use the resources. The kids already know. You already knew this little guy. They already know that I forgot how to do the game. They know. So in some ways, you can make when you share it, it gets lighter. You're able to deal with it more. Dave, we've touched on many topics. It's been a real gift of a show. What take-home message would you like to give to our listeners?
what what take home? I think that just what you said is extremely important. We're all aging. It's part of it. And of the stages we've gone through, each one has importance. This is the most complicated one, for me at least, for most of the people I work with, for most of my friends that I see. There's more fears in it. Am I going, there's more, I don't, should we buy another house? Or I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Throughout our lives, most people's lives, they have a pretty good idea what's going to happen tomorrow. As you age, that's always in the back of your head. Should I? The guy says to you, "This is a really good product. It's going to last 15 years." My reaction is, "What do I care if it's going to last 15 years?
Okay.
That's not
Yeah,
what I'm looking for at
right.
this point. I'm not sure I'm going to be around. I know I'm not going to be around 15 more years. I don't
Yeah,
think I am.
yeah.
I might be, but
Okay. So your take-home message is
is in some ways to accept the aging, accept that it's a difficult process, and be able to share it with people, and and to be able to it's to be able to accept it. It's to be able to enjoy it also. There are very enjoyable things. Let me tell you one of the things that happens with me.
we have 1 minute, Dave.
What? No, that can't be.
Okay, Dave, you're gonna have to speak very fast. So 4 minutes. Oh, no, 4 minutes till close. Go ahead. You have a
Okay.
minute.
One of the things that happens with me is one of the things that I used to have very blonde hair when I was younger. They used to call me Blondie. One of my fears is now they're going to call me Whitey. I'm in a parking lot. What do you? I'm in a parking lot, and this guy is yelling out, "Whitey, Whitey, come here, Whitey!" And I think he's talking to me because my hair is no longer gray; it's white now. And I go up to him and I go, and it's something that I don't want to be called Whitey. So I say, "Are you speaking to me?" He says, "No, I'm calling my dog." Truth. It's a true
Okay,
story.
it's a great
It's a
story
really,
to end
it's
on.
a really true
Okay,
story.
so you know what? You reminded us through all of this, you have to find the laughter. I mean,
Yes.
one of the remember laughter's the best medicine. Remember
Yes, yes, and it really is. It's
the
very
Reader's
important.
Digest. Yep,
Is
that's true. That's
It,
really true. If you can find things to laugh about, you can read old joke books, you can watch Lucille Ball. That's a gift. That's a gift. Yeah.
it really is. The other thing I want to tell you, what happens with me often, not how could I say it? It happens to me, is younger women will hold the door for me.
Uh-oh.
Now, when I was in my 20s, I would have interpreted that much differently than I interpret it now.
Okay.
I interpreted it, they're seeing me as an old man.
Mm.
And then I changed that around, the thinking around. And this is what, if you say a take home thing, this is something is that the reason they're doing it is that they had a pop that they loved. And that's the only reason they're doing it, is not because they're saying this old man can't open the door. It's that they're somewhere inside them, they had a pop or a dad that they really felt a sense of protectiveness again. It's a sense of caring, and it's just getting expressed this way.
Oh, it's perfect. It's a perfect gift. It's wonderful. I want to thank you for coming on, Dave.
Thank
We've
you for
really
asking me.
touched,
I,
we've
I,
touched a lot of
I had a
topics.
great time,
Okay, I want to thank my listeners.
as always.
Remember, you can hear this show and any prior show on Voice America Media and all the major podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iTunes, iHeart. Until next week, be safe and be listening.